I never thought I'd be telling this story. I never thought I'd need to. But maybe someone out there needs to hear it, because if it happened to me, it could happen to anyone. My name is Margaret, and I'm 78 years old. I've lived a good life. I worked hard. I raised a daughter I loved more than life itself. I tried to do everything right. But sometimes, even when you give someone your whole heart, they can break it anyway. This isn't easy to talk about. There's a certain shame, I suppose. People don't expect a mother to have to defend herself against her own child. But here I am, sitting in my little living room, surrounded by the things I thought would always bring me comfort. The photographs on the wall, the quilt I made when I was pregnant with her, the rocking chair my late husband built. All of it feels different now, because now every corner of this house reminds me of how close I came to losing everything. Not to a stranger, but to the very person I gave everything to. It started so small, so quietly. I didn't even see it happening. A comment here, a little suggestion there. My daughter, my only child, began to hint that maybe I wasn't quite myself anymore at first. I thought she was just concerned. Maybe I did forget to take the kettle off one day. Maybe I misplaced my reading glasses. Don't we all do that sometimes? But no, this wasn't concern. It was something else. She began to plant little seeds in the minds of others, neighbors, friends, even my doctor. Mom's been a little forgetful lately, she'd say with that sweet, innocent voice people always believed. I'm just worried about her. And because she was my daughter, they believed her. Why wouldn't they? And me, I didn't want to believe what was happening. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, that it was just stress or misunderstanding. But then the phone calls started, the visits from people checking on me, the suggestions that maybe I needed help. And all along, she kept smiling, kept telling me it was all out of love. I wish it had been. But I see now it wasn't about love. It was about control, about money, about my home, my savings, the little bit I'd set aside for my final years. She didn't want to wait. She wanted it now. And so she made up stories. She told people I had dementia, that I wasn't safe living on my own, that I needed her to take over everything. And the worst part, for a moment, I started to doubt myself. Could I really trust my own mind? Was I the one losing touch? That's what manipulation does. It makes you question the very things you know to be true. But I didn't lose myself, and I won't let her take what's mine, not my home, not my dignity, not my voice. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. From the moment I first held her in my arms, I knew my world had changed forever. I remember the weight of her tiny body against my chest, her little fingers wrapping around mine. She was my miracle, my light after so much struggle, my husband, and I tried for years to have a child, and when she finally came into our lives, I poured every bit of love I had into her dot as she grew. We were inseparable. I used to call her my shadow because she followed me everywhere. When I cooked in the kitchen, she'd pull up a little stool and help me stir the pots or roll out dough for cookies. We'd sing while we baked old songs I learned from my mother, silly jingles we made up ourselves. She had the sweetest voice, and she'd giggle when I'd hit the wrong notes on purpose just to hear her laugh. Our days were filled with small, simple joys. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun go down, sharing stories. I'd brush her hair at night and listen as she whispered her secrets to me. She trusted me with everything, her dreams, her fears, the little things that troubled her at school. I was her safe place, and she was mine. She always had a kind heart. When she was in elementary school, I remember how she'd bring home stray kittens or worry about a classmate who didn't have enough lunch. She'd ask me, "Mama, can we help them?" And of course, we always tried. That was the girl I raised, a girl full of compassion, curiosity, and love. Birthdays were special. She never wanted anything fancy. One year, all she asked for was a picnic at the park. Just the two of us. We spent the whole day there, feeding ducks, lying on a blanket looking at the clouds. I still have the pressed flowers we picked that day, tucked inside a book on my shelf. Even as she got older, we stayed close. Teen years can be hard, I know, but she still talked to me about her crushes, her friends, her dreams of becoming a teacher or maybe a nurse. I encouraged her, supported her every step of the way. When she graduated high school, I cried so much she teased me for days. Looking back, I can say with all my heart, she was my whole world. Every decision I made with her in mind. I worked hard, saved what I could, all so she'd have a good life, a secure future. I thought we had a bond that could never be broken. That's what makes what came later so painful. Because when someone you love that deeply turns against you, it shakes you to your core. I think about it often. When did things start to change? If I'm honest with myself, I can trace it back to after her divorce. Before that, she still called me most days, still came by for coffee, still hugged me tight like she meant it. But once the marriage ended, it was as if something in her hardened dot at first. I thought it was just the pain. I mean, who wouldn't be hurt after going through something like that? She had given so many years to that man, tried to build a life with him. When it fell apart, I tried to be there for her. I listened. I offered to help with whatever she needed. I told her, "Sweetheart, we'll get through this together." But little by little, I started to notice the coldness. She wasn't the same girl who used to run to me with her troubles. Instead, she started talking about money a lot. Every conversation turned to bills, the mortgage, legal fees. She'd sigh and say how unfair everything was, how she was struggling to keep up. I felt for her. I really did. I even offered to help with a bit of money when I could. I thought that's what mothers do. Then came the questions. At first, they seemed harmless. "Mom, do you have a will?" she asked one afternoon, out of the blue. I was surprised, but I didn't think much of it. I told her I had things in place, that her father and I had done that years ago. But the questions kept coming, and they started to feel different. Who's the house going to when you're gone? Do you have any debts I should know about? Wouldn't it be easier if I helped manage your accounts? I remember feeling a little knot in my stomach after some of these talks. I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just being responsible. Maybe she was worried about my well-being or trying to plan for the future. But deep down, something felt wrong. She started visiting more often, but not for the reasons she used to. She didn't come to share tea or laugh about old memories. She came with paperwork, with ideas about what should be done just in case something happens. She'd look around the house, almost like she was taking inventory of what was here, and the warmth that used to be in her eyes when she saw me was fading. There was something calculating there now, something that made my heart ache. Looking back, I see that the divorce wasn't just the end of her marriage, it was the beginning of the end of the daughter I thought I knew. I'll never forget the first time I realized she was lying about me. It wasn't some big dramatic moment. It was quiet, almost invisible at first. I was out tending to my little garden in the front yard, like I do every morning, when my neighbor, Mrs. Carter, came over. She had this concerned look on her face. "Margaret," she said gently, "if you ever need anything, if you ever get confused or feel lost, just knock on my door, okay?" I blinked at her, confused, lost, confused. "I'm fine, dear. Why would you think that?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Well, your daughter mentioned you've been a bit forgetful lately. She said you sometimes don't remember where you are or you leave things on the stove." I felt my knees go weak. My daughter said that. I had just been to my doctor a few weeks before. I passed all my checkups. No signs of memory issues. No signs of anything but the usual wear and tear of being in my late 70s. I may have my slower days, sure, but I always knew where I was. I always knew what I was doing. I smiled at Mrs. Carter, trying to brush it off. But inside, I felt that first sting of betrayal. I started to wonder what else was she telling people. After that, little things began to happen. A friend from church offered to drive me home, saying, "Just in case you have trouble finding your way." Another neighbor came by with leftovers, saying they didn't want me to worry about cooking. It was kind, but I could see the same look. In their eyes, pity, concern, like they thought I was fading away. It hurt. It hurt more than I can say, because I knew I was still sharp. I knew my mind was still mine. And yet, people began to look at me differently, all because of what she was saying. I confronted her, you know. I asked her why she was telling people I was forgetting things. She smiled, that soft, patronizing smile, and said, "Oh, Mama, I'm just worried about you. I'm just trying to make sure people check in on you. You know how you can be, how I can be." That didn't sound like care. That sounded like manipulation. And the more I tried to push back, the more she made it seem like I was being difficult or paranoid. It's a clever kind of cruelty, because people are so quick to believe that an older person might be slipping, and so slow to believe that the real problem is the one pointing the finger. That's when I realized this wasn't just about concern. This was the start of something darker. I thought I'd seen the worst of it with the whispers to neighbors. I thought if I kept calm, if I showed everyone I was fine, it would stop. But I was wrong, because the day came when she went beyond words. She called the authorities on her own mother. It was a Tuesday morning. I remember so clearly. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, reading my newspaper like I do every day. The sun was coming in through the window, warming the room. Everything felt peaceful until there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, two people stood there, a woman from Adult Protective Services and a police officer. Their faces were kind, but serious, the kind of serious that makes your heart race. "Mrs. Thompson," the woman asked gently, "we received a report that you may be at risk living alone, that perhaps you're having trouble caring for yourself." I was stunned. Who would say such a thing? They exchanged a look. I could tell they didn't want to say it, but finally, the woman replied, "Your daughter called us. She said you might be a danger to yourself, that you've been forgetting things, leaving the stove on, wandering outside, and not knowing where you are." My hands trembled. I set down my tea before I spilled it. I wanted to scream, to cry, but I forced myself to stay composed. I invited them in. I showed them my kitchen, no burned pots, no forgotten food on the stove. I walked them through my house, pointed out my neat rooms, my organized shelves. I answered their questions clearly, calmly. I could see the doubt in their eyes fading as I spoke. I told them about my last doctor's visit, how I passed my memory tests, how I managed my bills and my medications without issue. They stayed a while, asked more questions, checked that I had food in the fridge, that I wasn't living in filth. When they left, they assured me that everything seemed fine, that no action would be taken. But the damage was done, because now I knew just how far she was willing to go. She wasn't content to spread rumors. She wanted me declared incompetent. She wanted legal control. And she was willing to use the system, use the very people meant to protect the vulnerable to get what she wanted. After they left, I sat in that kitchen, staring at the sunlight on the floor, and I felt the deepest heartbreak I've ever known. Not because strangers had come into my home, but because the person who should have been my protector, my family, had become my enemy. That was the moment I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't going to stop. I had to find a way to protect myself.